This session is about employee rights and representation. Just before we start this session, I want you to have a look at the video link, The Future of Work. I want you to reflect on the video once you've watched it and think, do you agree or disagree with the points made by Jacob Morgan in the video? Have a think about what you think the future of work would look like and write one sentence that describes what you think the future of work would look like. This session we look at understanding the roles and responsibilities of the employee and understanding employees' basic rights and obligations of employment. I want you to have a look at this video by Jason Fried called Why Work Doesn't Happen at Work. Jason Fried thinks deeply about collaboration, productivity and the nature of work. He's the co-founder of 37 Signals, makers of Basecamp and other web-based collaboration tools, and a co-author of Rework. Once you've watched the video, I want you to think about your thoughts. Where do you get most of your work or study done? Is it in the office or is it somewhere else? Do we really do less work in the office? And if so, what does this mean for employees and the world of work? Okay, so what is an employee? An employee is someone who provides labour and or expertise in exchange for a wage and salary. Responsibilities of the employees. What kind of responsibilities do employees have in the workplace? I want you to think of the responsibilities that you have had in the current and also in your past workplaces. Come up with 2 responsibilities that you think are the most important. Some possible ideas might be the fact that you take due care and performance of work, you account to employers for monies and property, you disclose pertinent information to the employer, you're faithful to the employer's interests, and you obey lawful and reasonable demands. Okay, but there may be other responsibilities that you can also think of. So there are 10 national employment standards, and these include maximum weekly hours, so an employee can work a maximum of 38 ordinary hours in a week. Requests for flexible working arrangements, parental leave and related entitlements, annual leave, personal carers leave and compassionate leave, community service leave, long service leave, public holidays, notice of termination and redundancy pay, and the Fair Work Information Statement. Okay, it is important from an employee point of view that you familiarise yourself with these entitlements. So just a few points to note. Full-time and part-time employees get 4 weeks of annual leave based on their ordinary hours of work. Also important in terms of giving notice, to end an employee's employment, also known as firing or terminating employment, an employer has to give them written notice of their last day of employment. An employer can give notice to the employee by delivering it personally or also leaving it at the employee's last known address or sending it by prepaid post to the employee's last known address. An employee who is resigning doesn't need to give notice in writing, they can give it verbally. Employment can be terminated during leave, but the correct amount of notice still needs to be given. So I want you just to think about what is important to you as an employee. So is it the fact that you earn a lot of money? Would you prefer to work close to home? Would you prefer to have flexible hours? Would you prefer to have a job that is challenging? So just take a moment to think about what is important to you as an employee. Thinking about your values are something that you can add to your e-portfolio. Thinking about what you value most in a job and a career will help you applying for jobs. Also relates to what we call person-organisation fit. This is where we like looking at matching the individual values to those of the organisation. If there is a good person-organisation fit, there's a high chance that you'll stay committed with the organisation you'll be more satisfied and more motivated in your work and also perform better. In regards to pay, employees have to be paid the right pay rate for all hours they work, including time spent training, in team meetings, opening and closing the business, working trial shifts. It's really important that you familiarise yourself with your rights from a pay point of view and have a look at the Fair Work website, which looks at minimum wages and also discusses penalty rates. There's also a link to the pay rate calculator that you can check out to ensure that you are being paid correctly. A few other sort of points to note when we look at the different entitlements in the workplace. Full-time is considered to be about 38 hours per week. Part-time is shorter hours, but they're regular hours per week. If we look at casual employees, they're irregular hours. No sick pay or holiday pay. Long-term casuals, more than 12 months, can have parental leave. You can change from full-time to casual without the employee agreeing. It depends on your contract. An employee on probation still entitled to accrue leave and should be paid this upon termination. To change employees' regular hours, you must discuss them with them first if they're full-time or part-time. So let's reflect a little bit about your experiences with pay. How do you find out what you will be paid? Okay, so I guess the best way to do that is to have a look at that pay rate calculator before you start in your employment relationship to ensure that you are being paid correctly. Think about your own experiences and perhaps develop some strategies for finding out. These may include when you're applying for a position, in the interview, or perhaps once you have started work. There was an interesting article in Forbes 2016 about finding out with pay, and they offered 6 tips. They talk about arming yourself with the salary information before obviously applying for the job, and this is where looking at the Fair Work website and also researching similar positions can also provide that information. Tip 2, in terms of deflecting the salary question if you were asked early in the job interview. Now some individuals would rather talk about the salary up front, others would probably prefer to defer that question, so it's a little bit of a personal preference. Tip 3, be prepared to provide a salary range. So you might say, based on my research, similar positions are currently being paid between sort of X and Y, which is a great strategy if you get caught off guard in an interview. Tip 4, think about how much you'd like to make. Tip 5, think through ways to sidestep the salary question. So you might say, if I was to be successful, I'm sure I'd be able to reach an agreement on salary. Again, some of the ways you'd answer these questions might depend a little bit on your experience and also your confidence. Tip 6, discuss the salary range with a HR rep during the initial screening. So get a little bit of background information before you go into the interview. Awards and agreements that determine pay. So there's minimum conditions of work come from what we call registered agreements, awards or legislation. So if a business has a registered agreement in place, then this covers the work and the working conditions that you do. If there's no registered agreement, then what we call the award covers your work that you do. So it's really important, if you have a registered agreement, to make sure that you have a copy of that and you can actually check your conditions. Alternatively, it's important to go and have a look at the awards. So for example, if you're working in hospitality, there would be an award that covers your roles in hospitality. If you're working in retail, there would be a specific award that covers retail type work and so forth. It's also important to note your rights when it comes to unpaid work. So unpaid work can take on different forms, including student placements and unpaid internships and work experience. And this may be particularly relevant for you, particularly as you're studying at university. So obviously internships, work placements and work experience is a fantastic way to enhance your employability. However, we need to make sure that obviously you're not being exploited through some of that unpaid work. So the general reasons for unpaid work is to give a person experience in a job or industry, or to test a person's job skills, or to volunteer time and effort, perhaps to a non-for-profit. So again, checking out the rules at the Fair Work website is really important. Okay, so at the moment we see quite a lot of exploitation around unpaid work, and there's a couple of news articles here. So one example occurred with an international student who was obviously involved in unpaid internships that were lasting months, so an unreasonable amount of time that was benefiting the organisation. Another one was in a media company where they were not paying its interns appropriately, and they were also giving them graveyard shifts as a result of that. So again, it's really important to be aware of some of the exploitation that occurs and to know your rights when it comes to employment. In regards to public holidays, employees should get paid at least their base pay rate for all hours worked on a public holiday. Awards and enterprise agreements can provide entitlements for working public holidays, including extra pay, an extra day off or an extra annual leave, minimum shift lengths on a public holiday, and also agreeing to substitute perhaps a public holiday for another day. Again, it's important to check out the rules at the Fair Work website. So it's important to note that an employee's roster cannot be changed to deliberately avoid this payment. An employee doesn't get paid for a public holiday if they don't normally work on the day that the public holiday falls. And all employees have a right to be absent from work on a day or part day that is a public holiday. So just have a look at this scenario. John is a part-time employee. He works Monday to Wednesday each week. This year, Boxing Day, which is a public holiday, falls on a Friday. Does John receive public holiday entitlements? So as John's rostered hours don't include Fridays, he doesn't get paid for the Boxing Day public holiday. Alternatively, May is a casual employee and is rostered to work on Anzac Day. Does May receive public holiday entitlements? Yes, if May works on a public holiday, then she will receive extra entitlements. Public holidays are not counted also if on leave. In regards to leave, employees can take leave for various reasons. And these might relate to annual leave, public holidays, long service, carers, compassionate leave, maternity and parental leave. Again, it's important to check out your rights at the Fair Work website, and there's also a leave calculator that you can use there too. In regards to termination of employment, so you'll see the table there which has the minimum notice for dismissal, and it is based on your period of continuous service. Just a note too that service includes authorised unpaid leave, such as unpaid parental leave, but it does not include unauthorised leave or absences. Okay, so that's important to note when you are perhaps providing notice. So it doesn't apply obviously to casual employees, people who are employed for a specific period of time or task, or seasonal or sessional employees. So also in terms of what happens if you resign. So the same applies. You obviously need to make sure that you give the correct notice in accordance to your service. What happens when an employer gives more notice than needed? An employer can provide more notice than required in the award registered agreement or contract. The employee has to only work out the minimum notice period, although they can work out the extra notice if they want to. If you ever have a case of unfair dismissal, you need to lodge an application with Fair Work Australia within 21 days, and again you can find out all that information at the Fair Work website. There are some scenarios here for the termination of employment. So Jane is a full-time employee at Myer who has been working for the organisation for 4 years and has just had 1 year on maternity leave. So how much notice should Jane get? So the key here is to look back to the employee's continuous service and also look at whether the service included any authorised or unauthorised absences. So maternity leave is considered an authorised leave. So therefore Jane has been working at Myers for 5 years. In accordance to the table, 3 to 5 years is 3 weeks. Matt is a casual employee at Hungry Jack's and has decided to resign from his position. What is the best process for Matt to go about terminating his employment, and how much notice should Matt get? So if we looked at the rules of a casual employee, Matt does not have to give any notice. However, if you're looking at the goodwill and trying to maintain a positive relationship, perhaps you might want to get a reference from your manager. You might want to sort of consider actually providing some notice to your employer. Again, that's going to depend on that employment relationship, perhaps your relationship with your employer, to whether you decide to provide notice of 1 week or perhaps 2 weeks, depending. So that's sort of up to your discretion.